welcome to YOUCANIC Garage. Today we're going to talk about what you should do if your car is flooded. So if your car was filled with water and it's flooded, the first thing that you should do as soon as you get to the car is do not turn on the ignition, and also don't even press unlock on the doors, on the key fob, because when you do that, you energize. When you press unlock, you energizing the security system, but when you put the key in the ignition and you turn it on, you're energizing all the circuit boards on the vehicle, engine control unit, transmission control unit, and all those. And if they got water on them, what's going to happen is they're going to short, and they can get burned out and they can get damaged. So you want to avoid that. So if your car was flooded, and it might still have some water on it, but whether it does or not, when you get to the car, the first thing you should do is take the emergency key out of your key fob. So if it's a newer vehicle, they have these metal blades inside. So don't press unlock, but put the key in the keyhole. Sometimes this is covered, so you have to pop this off and use the metal emergency key to unlock the car. Then you want to locate the battery. Pull the hood release here. Remember, we don't want to turn on the ignition. Put the hood release, pull up the hood. If your battery is in the engine bay, you want to disconnect the negative. If your battery, sometimes it could be under the seat, or sometimes it can be in the trunk, like it is in this case. Locate the battery, and then you have a red cable, which is your positive, and a negative. Disconnect the negative. You can disconnect both if you want, but just the negative is fine. And now the car is not going to get any power. So you are basically minimizing the damage to the vehicle by doing this. And then the next step that you need to do is you need to go through the car, and you got to check the fuse panels if they got all filled with water. If you have control units like the engine control unit and you can locate that, you can open at least the housing, make sure that's all fully dried out. In this case, we had some water sitting right there, but you can see if you have water here, for example, not only you're gonna get that mold smell and all those issues, but water here is gonna short these wires, and that can cause problem to for the vehicle not to start. So you want to dry the car completely. Ideally, you want to open the different fuse boxes and control units if you can, and inspect them. These are not that hard to pull out, but you can see water damage. For example, on this one right there, you can see water damage all over. But if you turn the ignition on and this has water inside it, you basically completely, right away, you damage this whole unit. If you do let it dry out, it might still have issues, but there's a higher chance of it working. Sometimes the problem can come down the line though, because then stuff inside can corrode the circuit boards and stuff like that if water is still there. But at least this way you're minimizing that damage to the car. And then ideally, I would recommend that you let that car fully dry out. The longer you can let the car dry and sit out, the better it is. I would leave it with no power and basically and allow it to dry for at least a week. If you can leave it longer, that's even better, because even connectors and things like this, they're gonna have a lot of water on them, and the longer you let it, the better it is. On the inside, we recommend pulling out the seats and then pulling out the carpet and drying that, putting a fan on, and then allowing that to dry, because otherwise it's really hard to get that water from that carpet out if you don't pull it out. Pull them out and dry. So once you do that, now when you get ready, you feel like you have allowed the car to dry for at least at least a week, but ideally 10 days or even 10-15 days or so. Then the next thing that you do is you put everything back together, and then when you reconnect the battery. But there's something very important that you need to do in the engine. You want to remove the engine cover, and then locate all the spark plugs, remove the spark plug coils and the spark plug themselves, because if water came in through here and it goes into the cylinders, they can one of the valves is or more than one of the valves are going to be open. That cylinder gets filled with water. When you try to crank it, the valves close up and water cannot compress, and it will destroy your engine. So what you want to do is you remove all the spark plugs, all of them, crank the engine by hand a couple of times, then some of the water should come out of the cylinders if they get filled up with water, and then you can leave those off and then crank the engine a couple more times with a key. You're gonna see maybe a little bit of moist spraying out of the spark plug holes, but that ensures that all the water, most of the water, is out of there. Because not only the car won't start, but you can really damage those pistons. You can really damage that engine, and it's just gonna need a full rebuild, and it's not worth it. You probably have to get a new engine if you don't do this. This is very critical, and this is how a lot of the engines get ruined. So just to show you really quick, most engines, if you come on the crank pulley, you have a large nut or bolt here. Here is a 27 millimeter. You can put a wrench on this and crank it. Engines, you usually turn them clockwise. You can see the ignition coils right here. Make sure you take those off, and the spark plugs. So rotate that a couple of times and then crank it with a key a couple of times with these off spark plugs and coils. Then put spark plugs and coils back on. And the other thing you should check is you should check your engine air filter. Make sure that it's not soaked in water. Just replace those. You should flush the engine, put a new filter, drain the oil. You probably at that point have a lot of oil and water in oil, so drain the oil from the engine and put new oil. I would recommend driving that for like a day or two and then flushing it again, because you probably have a lot of water in other components of the car. They're getting mixed with the oil, so you want to put fresh oil, run the car for a day or two, and then drain that oil again and put fresh oil on that. So once you do all of this, you'll most likely be able to have a car that starts, but you might find out that there is going to be some electrical issues. So if your car does start, and you'd be lucky if you don't have any electrical issues at all. If you have a newer modern car, it's probably going to have some electrical issues to sort out. So if you use a full system scanner, here we're using the YOUCANIC scanner. Cars these days have a lot of control units. So you have things like the engine control unit, airbag, instrument cluster, and all those. So what you can do is you can scan the whole car all at once, and then you can see every module that has fault codes. Then at this point you can see here if the codes are current or if they are just stored. If they're stored, then you can just erase the codes, you can erase it. But if you have like here you say no CAN messages received from N93 Central Gateway Control Unit, so that control unit is not responding. So what you need to do is find where that is in your vehicle, and then probably even replace it. Some control units might need programming, others don't. It depends. If it's part of the vehicle's anti-theft system, like ignition, for example, or engine control unit, or things like that prevent the car from being stolen, a lot of times those will definitely need programming. But other modules, you might get away without having to program them. Just install a used unit, and that might be enough. But you can see we have fault codes over there. And another thing that you'll notice is that you might notice that the certain control units don't respond anymore. So right here we can see ISM, no response to requested codes. We had another one right here. So basically the scanner, when it tries to connect to that module, it's not getting a response from it. So this is usually this indication that module got shorted. I mean, it's possible the fuse for that module is blown, but if the car has been flood damaged, most likely water got stuck in that module and it got shorted when the car was powered up. But you can see some of them don't have full coats, a lot of them do have. But once you do fix the problem, what you can do, or you can use the scanner as well to erase the codes. Now this is going to go through every control module. If we hit erase and press yes, it's going to go through every control module and it's going to clear codes. But those ones that are like current fault codes, they won't clear. But so you can see the numbers on these goes down because some of them did clear and some did not. But like here it says current, those will stay. You can't clear those. But some that were just said stored, those can be cleared. These, so you have to address them and before you can clear them. But that's what you want to do if you have a car that was flooded. Of course, if you have insurance, you should probably contact your insurance. If you got full coverage on your vehicle, they will most likely take that car away and pay you whatever the car is worth. But if you have what's called liability insurance, then typically that's not going to be covered by the insurance. But as far as that goes, you need to contact a lawyer to find out, or contact your insurance to find out if your car will be covered one way or another. But if it's not, we would strongly recommend these steps to prevent further damage to the vehicle and to minimize it. And thank you for watching YOUCANIC, where you can be the mechanic.